Hello everybody and welcome to this video. It's another in the Student Exemplar series. We're going to have a look at some work completed by Ella Munn that did very well in Ella's mocks, and we're going to have a look at a Macbeth answer to begin with. So this was taken from Act 1 Scene 7, the extract, and that is of course the moment where Macbeth and Lady Macbeth are discussing the regicide to be committed. And this was a piece of work that Ella completed. She's happy to be named. Ella will receive a copy of my GCSE English Language and GCSE English Literature ebooks. If you want your work featured in a video, email it to me, info@mrbruff.com, and if I feature it in a video, you'll get the free ebooks as well. Shakespeare presents ambition, so the question was on ambition. Shakespeare presents ambition in Macbeth as an inherently destructive trait, in line with the religious beliefs of the Jacobean era that God gave you your place on earth, and to attempt or desire to transcend this status was a direct act against him. Thus Shakespeare uses ambition as the tragic flaw of the central protagonists. It is inarguably the source of their mutual demise. Here is a brilliant introduction. It links to the theme, it links to the writer, and it explains a bit about context. It also links to the sort of idea of the tragic flaw, which is important for tragedy. Firstly, Macbeth soliloquizes his desire to jump the life to come. The dynamic verb jump suggests an overwhelming craving to leap forth, unrestricted, into the supposedly more successful times that lie ahead. This becomes deeply ironic later in the play, as Macbeth's ambition becomes the cause of his eventual downfall. The audience respond to the cessation of the despot's rule with relief as the noble Malcolm restores order to Scotland. The notion of a jump also alludes to Macbeth's intention to cheat his way through the hierarchy, not only by regicide but by deceit, the framing of Duncan's sons to ensure his own coronation, as historically in Scotland the heir was chosen and not automatically the oldest son of the current monarch. Secondly, the playwright uses ecclesiastical imagery to warn the audience of how dangerous Macbeth's ambition will become. The metaphor of the poisoned chalice, a chalice being a vessel for drinking blessed wine, is an oxymoron that renders the audience aghast as they realize the magnitude of desecrating such a sacred object. This alludes to the widespread belief in the late Renaissance era in divine order, and hence that regicide would be not only high treason, but a betrayal of God. This image effectively demonstrates the potentially cataclysmic contagion effect that such wanton, insatiable ambition can bring, foreshadowing the other brutal murders Macbeth organises in the scenes to follow. Now let's just pause and think about these two paragraphs. Obviously very good paragraphs. The first is language analysis with a close word analysis of jump, looking at its word class and thinking about how that is important. And the second is a look at the imagery and the idea of the oxymoron that is used, which is the language structure. Thirdly, Macbeth ends his soliloquy in a warning to himself not to allow ambition to overwhelm him by describing an image of a horseman attempting to mount his horse, but is too eager and falls regardless, o'erleaps itself, strongly foreshadows the tragic hero's own demise in the play. He fails to take heed of his own warning, instead becoming hubristic and complacent. Furthermore, to overleap could be constructed as comedic and a humiliating act of misjudgment, much akin to Macbeth's almost laughable ignorance of his approaching death in Act 5. Now this is an interesting paragraph because I think whereas the first couple of paragraphs were very detailed analysis, this one is perhaps a little bit rushed. So I think the idea of analysing something as foreshadowing is an example of structure analysis. So I would say, I would make it very clear that this is a structure point. I would write something like, Shakespeare uses structure to present notions of ambition. And then you're making the examiner aware, look, I've analysed language, now I'm analysing structure. Then there's this talk of the comedic, humiliating aspect and the laughable ignorance of his approaching death. But that's just mentioned at the end. And I always think this is interesting with high ability students' work. It's almost as if they have an idea, they write about it, and then as they're writing about one idea, another comes into their mind, which they just sort of throw in at the end. But I think this idea of comedic and humiliating act of misjudgment could be further explored. It's not fully explained. Elsewhere in the play, Lady Macbeth is also portrayed as an ambitious woman with immoral intentions. She calls upon the spirits to fill her to the toe-top full of direst cruelty, bridging the separation between the human and paranormal realms in the play. Her insatiable lusting for power is evident in her use of toe-top. The consonants of plosives here, in combination with her speaking in iambic pentameter, suggests to the audience that she feels the cruelty inside her brimming, teetering on the edge. A small change more could be motivation enough to act upon her desires, sending the cruelty spilling over into the world around her and manifesting itself in the murder of Duncan. This comes on the messenger informing Lady Macbeth that she will play hostess to Duncan that very night, creating great tension as the audience realise her intention to commit regicide. So here we have the analysis that there's a mixture of things going on in this paragraph, but probably the consonants of plosives and the iambic pentameter, the best bits picked out here. This idea here, though, so the consonants of plosives in combination with her speaking in iambic pentameter suggests she feels the cruelty inside her brimming. I would like to see it explained. How does consonants of plosives and iambic pentameter suggest that it's brimming inside her? Sometimes we miss a stage in our explanation. We assume that the examiner is going to follow and understand what we're talking about, and we need to make sure we explain fully. In contrast, ambition begins to appear as a negative theme for the tragic couple as their paranoia sets in. Lady Macbeth's helpless cries of "out, out, damned spot" reflect her overwhelming remorse. She feels as though the blood on her hands is salient to those around her and spends her days scrubbing her hands manically, signifying to the audience that she has entered a state of hallucination. Finally, Macbeth's sending of a third murderer to ensure the homicide of Banquo and Fleance has been carried out suggests that he is brutal in his demands and wants to rest in the knowledge that there is no threat to his throne. Alternatively, it could imply that he could not trust the first two assassins fully, which is of course deeply ironic, as Macbeth himself is the true tyrant who is not to be trusted. So these last two paragraphs are probably the weaker two paragraphs of the answer. Now don't get me wrong, this is a fantastic answer in its entirety, but remember, if the question is about ambition, this paragraph here doesn't mention ambition at all, and this paragraph says ambition begins to appear as a negative theme for the couple. Now, if that's the point being made here, that ambition is a negative, it would be good to see that taken further. What is Shakespeare then saying about ambition, about selfish ambition? Because we want to take things outside of the play, write about the writer's ideas and themes, rather than writing about the characters as if they're real. Overall, ambition in the case of these two tragic heroes eventually bestows upon them the opposite of what they had hoped. Instead of being strong rulers of Scotland, both are dead, and the audience reflect on Macbeth's moral message that not everything is as it seems. I think this could be stronger at the end, the message that not everything is as it seems. Yes, that is, a very much a theme in the play, but could this be more specific about the theme of ambition? That selfish ambition ultimately leads to destruction or something like that. So overall, a very strong answer, very well written, very well expressed, lots of language analysis, nice little bits on context. I think it's better at the beginning, and needs to make sure, this student would need to make sure they're constantly referring to the question and perhaps trying to link out to the writer's ideas and themes a little more often than they do.